Hello, everyone. Welcome back to SA Chats. We are here with a very special guest. I'm super excited to introduce Henry Cisneros. Henry is a former mayor of San Antonio and secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. He's also the chairman of Triple I, an infrastructure investment firm, founder and chairman of CityView, and founder of Arboretum San Antonio. He holds a Bachelor of Arts and Master's degree in Urban and Regional Planning from Texas A&M University. He earned a master's degree in public administration from Harvard and a doctorate in public administration from George Washington University, and has been awarded more than 20 honorary doctorates from leading universities. Additionally, Texas A&M University at San Antonio is the site of the Cisneros Center for Emerging Leaders. As well as being here today, we'll be able to explore why and how throughout his career, I should say, he's used leadership to help people improve cities. And he's a great example of how caring for our community can lead to big changes. Welcome, Mr. Cisneros.
Steffi, thank you very much. Thank you for the work you're doing in the environmental field, specifically the work you're doing at the Arboretum. And I look forward to anything that might be helpful to these young people who are preparing to compete. But what's important is not competing, but deepening their knowledge and their respect and familiarity with environmental themes. And so thank you for putting them in position to learn more and be more helpful to the society.
Thank you. As you mentioned, the theme for this year is environmental quality in San Antonio. How does your experience as a city leader, former city leader, and an active person involved in civic engagement, how do you support environmental quality?
Well, first of all, we're fortunate to live in a city that has a history that is rooted in environmental concerns. For the thousands of years before the Europeans ever arrived here, the indigenous people were here because of our environmental attributes. They roamed across, we had migratory tribes of Native Americans who found the San Antonio River and the other rivers and creeks in this area, lined by shade trees, pecans, and cypresses. They used them for shelter. They used them for food. They settled for periods of time along the banks. We still find arrowheads and pottery shards along the creeks and rivers. Um, and so the region has always been kind of environmentally friendly for people. When the Spaniards arrived here, the journal of the first Spanish expedition had in it notes about what a horrible trip they had across the heat of South Texas, the brush country, the near desert of South Texas, and then arrived at this oasis of water and cool and shade and potential sites for habitation. And and uh, and here's where they built the colony, if you will, the colonial city that began in San Antonio. The missions came at that period, and a lot of residences. And in due course, we know the high points of San Antonio history. But the truth of the matter is, at every point, several of the environmental features of our city have been prominent. The fact that we're settled in a kind of an eco crossroads with the hill country and the limestone caverns to the north, the blackland dirt to the east for farming, the South Texas plains that take us all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, and then the beginning of the plains to the west. And that means that we have a broad array of plant types. We have a broad array of animal types over the centuries. Uh, and we've proven to be a wonderful place for human habitation, a city of trees, a city that's green, a city that's got habitable climate, a city protected from some of the elements. We're not in a tornado zone. We're not in an earthquake zone. Um, so there's a lot about San Antonio that is truly environmental assets and that truly we ought to protect and we ought to respect and we ought to preserve. And that's why the Arboretum is so important, because you'll notice a lot of the themes that I sort of just drew out, the Arboretum speaks directly to them.
Wonderful. Yes, San Antonio does have many jewels in its crown, and trees and green spaces are one of them. How would you define environmental quality in an urban context?
Well, San Antonio, I think, has done a good job of bringing environmental attractions into the urban setting. There's not many cities in America that have a river running through them that is as humanly friendly as the San Antonio River. People can walk along the banks, enjoy the shade, uh, sit and have a meal or refreshments along the river. And it's not just now the San Antonio River, it's also all the creeks where we're now building trails for biking, for hiking. We're one of the few cities in America that literally has a trail system that encircles pretty much the habitated area, and that can be used in that way. We have an abundance of parks, from the venerable Brackenridge Park and the smaller parks in the downtown. They go back 100 years. But now we have parks like Hardberger Park and Government Hill, Government Canyon, um, and many others, McAllister Park, and just around the corner will be the Arboretum.
So tell me, what would you say are the key indicators you use to assess environmental quality in a community like San Antonio?
Well, I would say the principal indicator is the use of the city outdoors by the community, by the people, by the residents. And we just have a lot of days that are suitable for outdoor life. We really have only just a few days in the winter that are untenable, and you don't want to be outdoors because it's freezing or it's raining, but just a few, and not even every year. In the summertime, yes, we do have that heat that runs from late May and June and July and August, and I'm not going to pretend that it's not debilitating, but people work around it. We get the breeze that comes up in the evening, and it doesn't stop a lot of outdoor sports and hiking and biking and other things. So San Antonio is a city with a large uh, outdoor agenda, whether it be fiestas and plazas or horseback riding or bike riding or bike clubs or youth sports or adult sports, everything from flag football to tennis to soccer to skeet shooting. We're very much an outdoor place. So I would say the first indicator of how the environment is suitable to people is outdoor life. And that should promote healthy living. In addition, I would say it actually enters into big decisions, business decisions, and government decisions. For example, the reason that we have the strong military presence here, particularly the flying bases, and we're the headquarters of the Air Training Command at Randolph Air Force Base, is because we have something on the order of 340 days a year that are suitable for flying out of 365. There's a few days of rain and a few days of storming and a few days of maybe ice, but 340 days is more than most places in the country suitable for flight training and flight operations. Rarely have cancellations of flights at the airport. So it enters into big decisions what we're like environmentally. In addition, other attributes of our environment, such as water, have created uh, the ability to attract particular kinds of industries like the hospitality and tourism at SeaWorld and at Fiesta, Texas, and along the Riverwalk. And it's not an accident that the Alamo and the Riverwalk are the #1 and #2 most visited spots in Texas. So those are all indicators, if you will, markers of our environmental attributes, in my opinion.
So you've mentioned water, land,
Right?
and air.
Correct.
So as the students sort of begin thinking about refining what their um, challenge, theme, or
Mhm.
topic is going to center on,
Mhm.
how would you suggest they think critically about these issues around water, land, and air?
Well, I would say to students, it's important that you personally make the connection and learn the connection between the environment and the things we've talked about: water, land, air, and the quality of life, because the quality of life is right at the heart of almost everything else we do in a city. Cities are places where people live, where people learn, where people recreate, where people pray, where people gather. From time immemorial, from the day people came together, came out of the savannah and the jungle and the plains, and came in to find out that they needed to live together in these things we call cities, because they could protect themselves, because they could share labor and produce different things and help each other along, because they could govern themselves that way, etc. From the day that human beings discovered that, and there's a professor at Harvard who has said cities are one of the greatest inventions of mankind. It advanced mankind into the advanced societies that we have. But if you look at the history of cities across the world, many of them are located in places that are obviously human compatible. So the interconnection between, as you say, water, land, air quality, and the ability to build a modern city is a very tight connection. The best places in America to live are the places where people have some beautiful vistas, some outdoor scenes, some quality air that they can breathe, access to water, whether it be the ocean and beaches or rivers or lakes, and 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 the land, of course, is suitable for building shelter, etc. So I would say to the students, try to make that connection. It is a real connection, and it involves things we take for granted, but which our ancestors had to think about. Where are we going to locate this city? Does it have enough shelter? Is water easily available? Are we going to suffer droughts that dry us up, or flooding that floods us away? Um, and what is the ambient air like? So they had to make those decisions. We take them for granted, but we're getting past the point where we can take them for granted. And we have to think through, what is the future source of our water supply? And how do we ensure its quality? How do we ensure that our air is breathable, and we're not accentuating problems of heat and climate change by the emissions that we put into the air of carbon dioxide, chemicals, and so forth. And basically, how do we live on this precious earth that God has given us? I think those are all legitimate subjects of pursuit for the students in this program.
Thank you. I'm glad that you mentioned cities and in the context of the intersectionality of those themes. And as we round out our chat today, I was hoping that you could share what inspired you to pursue urban planning.
I was at Texas A&M in the 1960s during the height of the civil rights movement, and I was there in a student in 1968, one of the most tumultuous years in American history. President Johnson stepped down as president because of the Vietnam War and its protests in the United States. In April of that year, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. In June, Senator Robert Kennedy was assassinated. The cities burned, um, and there were riots and burning all across America. It looked like the country was coming apart. We were about to enter a civil war. It went on with the presidential election that year, and the Democratic convention in Chicago was a police riot. And there were explosions and kidnappings, and it was a very, very tumultuous time. I knew before that I wanted to be in some kind of public service. I thought it would be more institutional, like the Foreign Service or the military. But after studying those events and looking at some people that I admired across the country who were mayors, they were running cities, they were trying to make America work in these cauldrons of discontent that were our cities. And I just thought, I love this country. I want to see it progress. It would be good to help it in the international arena or even in the national security arena. But it's also important to help make it work in our localities, in our neighborhoods, in our metropolitan areas. That is noble work, and that's what I want to do. And so there are very few people who can say that what they set out to do when they were juniors in college and coming to those realizations is what they've done their entire life. And that really is every bit of study, every bit of work, every bit of civic endeavor that I've been associated with is somehow connected to how we're going to live together in our cities.
Wonderful.
So that's how I came to this. And then, it's very clear when you are a mayor of a city like San Antonio that the welfare of the city, the well-being of the city is dependent upon how you manage environmental themes. San Antonio is the largest city in America to draw its water from an underground aquifer exclusively. That's the only source of water that we have is underground aquifers. And so the question is, can you assure the quality of the water in those aquifers? Can you do the things to protect the water so it isn't depleted, isn't polluted? Our city, our people depend on it. How do you have a city if you don't have access to water? It's critical. Similarly, how do we protect our land so we're not over densifying, congesting with traffic, etc.? How do we manage, all of the aspects of the environment of our city, our air quality? We've had issues with ozone. We've had issues of pollution that wafts across the city because it's on the south and the prevailing breezes from the southeast take it across the city. We've had polluters in particular industries that have to be regulated. So you can't manage a city, you can't lead a city if you're not aware of the environmental threats to that place. It's just totally, completely linked. So that's how I came to this. And over the years, I've become more convinced. For example, right now I'm spending a lot of time working on the Austin-San Antonio corridor. But that corridor is not going to be a functional corridor if we're not linked to the Austin area. Some mobility issues, meaning freeways, but also rail to reduce pollution, increase speed, and offset congestion, right? I've become a great fan in recent years of a new project called the Great Springs Project, which will link the blue hole from which the San Antonio River emanates near Incarnate Word University and Barton Springs in Austin, and for 75 miles block up, that is to say, aggregate, assemble the creeks, the pathways, um, the springs that link the two areas, because Simply stated, if we don't do it now, with the pressure there is on development, with people waiting to buy up the land, if we don't do it now, it can never exist. It will not exist in the future. It'll be built over, it'll be paved over.
Mm.
So whether you're talking a neighborhood or whether you're talking an entire region, you have to take these environmental considerations into play if you want to build a place that is of human quality for the long run.
Beautifully said. And I'm sure we have some aspiring urban planners on our student teams. And, it goes to show with your leadership and your experience how you've been able to help many people and improve our local community
Thank you, Steph.
and hopefully inspire our students to really think critically about the themes that we've discussed today as they go about and work on their problem statements for the upcoming competition.
Well, I hope there's something in what we've talked about that is useful to the students. I think I've painted a big picture, maybe a 30,000-foot picture, and the students may want to dig deeper, but I guarantee you the things that I've described are real, and the things that I've described are current and timely,
Mhm.
and that we need the next generation working on them. So I want the students to study hard, prepare hard, think hard, and create, because we need all your talents for
Mm.
the future. So we want you to develop those talents.
Well said, and you heard it here from Mr. Cisneros.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for your time.
You do a great job in interviewing, and you framed this well and organized it well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the time you're spending with the students. We need that.
Absolutely.